All right, who has the amplitude for the first one?
3.
3. I heard a couple of 3s. Do you guys agree with that? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so depending on where you start, your A value might be positive or negative, but remember that the amplitude is always positive, okay? So even if your A value is negative, your amplitude is positive. The period, you can choose any point as your starting point, but if it's possible to choose 0 as your starting point, that's helpful for the period because you're going to follow this sine curve along, and then it would end right here. So you can see how long is one graph?
2 pi.
2 pi, good. So even if you started somewhere else, say I started at 2 pi and I went to 4 pi, that's still a length of 2 pi. So the length of the graph horizontally is 2 pi. Since the midline is right there on the x-axis, do we have a vertical shift? No. All right, raise your hand if you did at least one equation that started at 0, 0. Did anybody do one of their equations starting at 0, 0? One person, 2 people, 3, 4? Okay, so I'm going to do that equation, but then I'm going to ask you guys for another equation too. So say I decide to start right here at 0, 0. Then I'm going to have no phase shift for my equation. So I'm going to start with y equals, and I know I have a 3, but is it positive or negative? It's negative because it's going down first. Is it sine or cosine if I start right here on the midline? Sine starts on the midline. And then because I didn't change the period, it's just x. And I think that's it, right? Just y equals negative 3 sine x? Okay. I would like to hear some other equations besides this one. Raise your hand if you have another equation besides y equals negative 3 sine x. Okay, Emma, what'd you write?
3 cosine x in parentheses minus 1.
X minus...
No, the x is in parentheses.
Oh, okay.
And then minus 1 outside.
Minus 1. So for this one, did you move your midline down to negative 1? That's okay, because I think that we should do a cosine one. I just want to figure it out together. So I think that the midline's going to still stay at 0, but we're going to do a vertical shift. All right, so Emma, where do you want to start your cosine? Do you want to start it here at the high point or down here at the low point? Okay. So if I shift left pi over 2, is that a plus or a minus? Good. So I'm going to have x plus pi over 2. All right. Did anybody else have that equation? No? Okay. Anybody have a different equation? Christian, what'd you have?
Y equals negative 3 cosine parentheses x minus pi over 2.
All right. So you shifted the other direction. Good.
Yeah, I should have.
Okay. So Christian started his graph right here. And because he shifted right, it's minus pi over 2, but because it starts at a low point, it's negative 3 cosine. So these are all good answers. Does anybody have another answer, Michael?
I have y equals 3 sine parentheses x plus pi.
X plus pi.
Yes.
Okay, so did you shift over here?
Yes.
All right, do you guys see Michael shifted his graph to the left so that he could have a nice normal sign that's not even flipped? Anybody else do one like that? Okay, good. All right, these are all good equations. You see, how many equations could I write for this graph?
Infinite.
Infinite. Yeah, I could write an infinite number because you can always shift it more to the right or more to the left. Okay, next one. Before I know my amplitude, I got to find my midline. Where's my midline?
2.
Let's see. 2 looks like it's right in the middle. That's good. So then how much is my amplitude?
3.
3. From the midline to the top is 3. All right, if I start right here and I end right here, you can see that your period is how much? 2 pi, good. The vertical shift was up or down?
Up.
Up. 2, right?
Yes.
If I start right here, do I have a phase shift?
No.
No, so I'm going to do my first one with no phase shift. I just think that's the easiest, but then we'll try to figure some other equations out.
Is there
Wait, let me hear this first. Yeah, it's possible. So like this could be in between the lines here. So yeah, it's possible to have a graph that can't start on the y-axis, yeah. Yes? Why didn't, because I chose this to be my start point. So that's why I didn't have a phase shift. But if you chose a different point, like this one, then you would have a phase shift, okay? So we'll look at those answers too. But I'm going to start here first. So starting up there, I have an amplitude of 3. And is that sine or cosine? Cosine when you start high. Remember, cosine normally starts high, so that's a positive cosine. If you start down here, it's a negative cosine. And then x. And then plus what? Plus 2, thank you. Are more equations for number 2? Raise your hand if you have another equation for number 2. Danny, what'd you get?
So for number 2, I can see it's negative sine. Negative sine.
Are you starting right here?
Negative 3 sine x plus 2.
X, okay. So I like all the things you included, but how are we going to include the phase shift that went to the right pi over 2?
Minus pi over 2.
What do you think, Danny? If I go right, is that plus or minus?
Minus pi over 2.
Very good. All right, so I have a cosine, I have a negative sine. Can we add one more equation there? All right, Michael, let's give it a try.
I had the same thing as the sine one, except that I didn't have the negative in front of the 3, and it was x plus pi over 2.
So 3 sine x plus pi over 2, and then you had a plus 2?
Yes.
All right, so let's check that one out. So we're going to go left this time, and now it's a positive 3. That looks good. All right, well done. Okay, next one, number 3. I'm going to change colors because I'm kind of getting squished together here. All right, where's the midline going to be for number 3? Negative 2, good.
Wow. Not funny.
All right, did the period change this time?
Yes.
Yeah, because if I start here, where do I end? 4 pi? So my period is 4 pi. What's my amplitude? 1. Vertical shift was up or down? Down 2. And if I start on the y-axis, do I have a phase shift? No. All right, so then for this one, it would be y equals, do you have to write the 1? No, so is it sine or cosine? So y is equal to sine x, oh, I missed something, didn't I? What do I need to do if I have a period of 4 pi? All right, how did you guys get that? What did you calculate?
2 pi over n.
Okay, so my a value is 2 pi over 4 pi, which becomes 1/2. No, that's my b, right? Sorry, that's the b value. The b value is 2 pi over 4 pi, which is 1/2. So then it's 1/2 x, and then minus what? 2. Good.
How do you know when to and when not to add parentheses?
When to and when not to. So it's not bad to add parentheses, but you definitely have to add parentheses if you have a phase shift. Okay? You can add them other times as well. All right, anybody have another equation for number 3?
Could be a phase shift.
Yeah, it can be a phase shift. Yeah, we're about to get one. Yes, Meredith.
Cosine, sorry, negative cosine,
Negative cosine?
x, plus pi, minus 2.
Okay, so this one looks like it's going to shift left. So if we start here.
And then we need the 1/2 still.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. I actually totally forgot about that. 1/2. Okay. I think that works. That's good. Anybody have another one?
On the test, will we have to write both equations?
No, but you know why this is useful? It's because for your project you have to write both equations. So so once you write, maybe for number 3 you would see that as a sine equation, but then you have to figure out how to write it as a cosine equation too. Okay?
Okay, so you got the phase shift by.
So in part A it says graph time in months on the x-axis and ice cap size in million square miles on the y-axis. So even though the months are longer, that went away. Even though the months are longer, how many months do they have in a year?
6, 12.
They still have 12 months. If you're not sure about that, you can divide 687 by 57. You should get about 12. So when it says graph time in months on the x-axis, we only need 12 months. You can keep putting numbers on your axis though if you want. So let's see. I'm going to put 0 here. And then 1. So we're going to put the months on the darker lines, okay? You guys should be doing that on your paper too. It's a little hard to tell this one. 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12. And then we need to write time in months. All right, on the side it's going to be a little trickier. We need to put ice cap size in million square miles, and the biggest it can be is 3.7. So we're going to top it off at 4. So this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 on this line right here, and this is ice cap size. In millions of square miles. So on this graph, they gave us 2 points. They said, suppose these, the minimum and maximum, occur at the beginning of month 4 and month 10, respectively. So the minimum, 1.7 million square miles, that happens, at 0.17 million square miles, that happens at month 4. And then the maximum, 3.7 million square miles, that happens at month 10. So all that other information that was up there about how many days in a year, that's interesting, but really not necessary for solving this problem. All right, so if this is 1, what's each line going to be? There are 5 lines here. So each line is point what? 0.2, good. So 0.17 is going to be a little bit before the first line. So I'm going to x equals 4, and I need to make a dot a little bit before the first line for 0.17. And then x equals 10, that's 3.7. So that's going to be between 3.6 and 3.8. About there. Okay?
Why did you put 1.7?
0.17?
Oh, 0.17, sorry.
Yeah, 0.17, it said was the smallest, and it said that happened at month 4. All right, so I know the bottom of my graph and I know the top of my graph. I need to find the midline, and because I'm not exactly on the lines, I can't just count boxes. So how can I find the number that's exactly in the middle between 2 numbers? You know? The average, right. So the average is to add them and then divide by 2. So we're going to do that, okay? So to find our midline, let's see, I'm going to change color. All right, so the average of 0.17 and 3.7. All right, those of you who have calculators, I know I didn't take them all out yet. Can you round that to 1 decimal place for me? What did you get? Anybody have an answer? Danny?
It's like 1.9.
Anybody else getting 1.9?
Yeah, I got 1.9.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1.9 is the midline, and we can put that right here. And 1.9 is going to be between 1.8 and 2. So right between those two boxes there, are going to put your line. It's awfully hard to graph on the smartboard. But you guys understand, I'm trying to get that between those two lines there, okay? All right, what two numbers can I subtract to find my amplitude? Yes, this is 3.7 here, and this is 1.9 here. So if I subtract those, it should give me my amplitude. Okay, could anybody tell from the context of the problem what the period of this graph is? 12 what? 12 months, that's right. Every 12 months, the ice cap is going to get all the way larger, then all the way smaller to its smallest again. So every 12 months this repeats. So the period is 12 months. And then to find the b value, we divide 2 pi by what? 12, right. So 2 pi over 12, which is pi over 6. Good. All right, now, before we do the equation, I'd like to finish the graph. So if the whole period is 12 months, we need to split that 12 months into the 4 parts of our graph. So I'm going to cut the period into 4 parts. Because remember when we do a graph, there are 4 parts. There's like, for a sine graph, there's a part going up to the top, and then the part going down to the midline. And then there's the part that goes from the midline down to the bottom, and then back to the midline. So each sine and cosine graph has like 4 distinct parts to it, okay? So we're going to cut it in half. Half the period is 6 months. Yeah, you're right. And then a quarter period is going to be 3 months. So every 3 months, you're going to have a new point on your graph. So this is my minimum. If I add 3 points to it, that's going to give me month 7, and I'm going to be on the midline right here. Okay, so that's my minimum. The midline, we found that was our average of the smallest and the largest. And then after month 10, we go 3 months later, we're going to be back at the midline again. Okay, and I need one more point, and I'm out of room over here, so I'm going to go back this way. Yes, go ahead.
I'm really confused how you went from 7 to 13.
Oh, I went from 7 to 10. Remember we already had that point there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I appreciate the question. Okay, and then from 4, I'm going to go back 3 more to 1, and I'll be at the midline right there. So now I have 5 points, and then you can sketch your curve. But I'm still going to pick this as my start point, because that was from the original data that they gave me, and it's better to use the original data in your equation. So if I started at 1, it would be sine, but I'm going to start at that minimum point because that was some of the original data they gave me. You can write it as a sine equation. It won't be wrong. It's just slightly better if you use the original data. So I chose a start point and I labeled it start, and you guys should do the same thing too. So because I chose that one, will it be sine or cosine? If it's on the midline, it's sine. And if it's a maximum or a minimum, it's cosine. Thanks. And does my graph have a reflection? Yes, because I'm starting at low.
Why did you start making cosine again?
Say that again?
Where are you starting at? Oh, you're starting with small.
Yeah. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take out the calculators. You don't need them to answer that question right there. You can answer that question based on what you did on your warm-up. So I want you to see if you can fill in your equation and compare with the neighbor while I get the calculators out. Okay, so Jesse's going to read his, and you guys are going to agree or disagree, okay?
I don't think I'm
Okay, well, we'll just pick out the parts we like the most, okay? Y equals, go ahead.
Equals negative 1.8 cosine.
Okay.
And I got stuck here. So.
You're not sure about the b value? Well, we actually calculated it, right?
Wasn't it pi over 6?
Uh-huh.
Cosine parenthesis pi over 6. 12.
Well, we need an x here, right? And then did the x shift left or right?
Shifted right.
Right, so I'm going to put a minus here.
X minus, we started at, oh, 1 point.
We started right here. So you just want the x value there.
So it started at 4.
4, very good.
Minus 4.
Plus.
Plus 1 point. No.
Yeah.
Oh, plus 1.9.
Yeah, 1.9 because that's your d value. Very good. All right, did you guys get that?
Yeah.
So like we said, there's more than one way to write the equation, but we all did it this way this time just so that we could be on the same page, okay? Question?
How'd you get 1.9?
So 1.9 is the vertical shift, and we got that from the midline. Remember when we averaged the top and the bottom? All right, now it says use your equation to determine the size of the northern Martian polar ice cap at the beginning of the 8th month. So we're going to plug 8 into our equation. To do that, you need to press mode and make sure that you are in radian mode, because we're talking about radians with the pies, okay? So mode, I'm in radian mode, and then I'm going to start typing it in. It was negative 1.8, right? Thank you, cosine. So we're actually, I'm not putting in the y equals yet. I'm going to put it on the y equals on the next page, but this time I'm just trying to get a number. I just want to find the size of the ice cap. And then pi is above the up caret, so there. Over 6. And instead of the x, I'm going to put what number? I think somebody said it. And this time we're going to put 8 in, because we're trying to find the beginning of the 8th month. So, yes.
Is it degree or radian?
Radian, please. All right, so I think I typed it in correctly. Let me know if you get the same answer as me. All right, anybody else get 2.8? Good, now is that 2.8 square miles? What is that? Would that make sense for the polar ice cap to be 2.8 square miles?
2.8 million.
Thank you. 2.8 million square miles. Okay. So technically you could have done that calculation with any old calculator, but on the next page you definitely need a graphing calculator because this time we're going to plug a value in for y. So one good method to plug a value in for y is to graph it. So I'm going to turn the page, okay? So using a graphing calculator, determine the number of months the ice cap covers less than 1 million square miles. So we're still in radian mode, and now you're going to press window. So window. And let me move this so I can see my directions. X min should be 0. X max is 12 because that's what we have on our graph. X scale is 1. X min is 0. Or Y min is 0. Y max is 4. And for the Y step we're going to do 0.2 because that's what we had on our Y axis. Alright, so I just copied that window directly from here, and now I'm going to press Y equals and clear out what's in there. The Y scale was 0.2. Alright, and then you're going to put your equation in the Y1, so negative 1.8 cosine. This time you put the X instead of the 8. Negative 1.8 cosine pi over 6. parentheses x minus 4. Make sure you guys have an x this time, okay? Make sure you have two closed parentheses after the minus 4, and then plus 1.9. Okay, and we want to know when that graph is below y equals 1. So in the next one, you're just going to put in a 1 for y equals 1. So the whole equation went into the first y. And in the second y, you just have 1, because we want to see where does the sine graph go below 1, or the cosine graph. And then press graph when you're ready, so everybody can see it.
Oh wait, you didn't do it. You didn't do 8. You just did.
No, I didn't do 8 this time because I wanted x to vary. All right, so this is my cosine graph. And then that's when the y equals 1. So can you see the part where the ice cap is below 1 square mile? Yeah, it's happening right here. So about what month does it start to go below 1 square mile?
February.
Yeah, month 2. Around month 2 it starts to go below. And then when does it get back up?
Month 4.
Let's see. So month 4 it starts increasing. Month 5 it's still below. It looks like it's month 6 here.
Well, I meant 4 months.
Okay, so a total of 4 months. That's right. So between month 2 and month 6, it looks like we're below 1 square mile. Okay, so let's write that out. So it says, for how many months does the cap cover less than 1 million square miles? So we're going to write that it's between months 2 and 6. So that would make 4 months. For 4 months, yep. Okay, so I am going to give you guys some work time to see how much you can accomplish on the next one about your body temperature. And we'll come back together in a little bit to see what you got already and what we still need to figure out, okay? All right, so the information at the top is telling you that your body fluctuates between 98.2 degrees and 99 degrees in a 24-hour cycle. And it tells you that your minimum temperature happens at about 5 a.m. So a lot of you guys graphed 5 a.m. and then you graphed 98.2, which was that minimum. So that would be like right there. Let me know if I get that wrong, okay? I think that's right. And then 24 hours later, it would be 5 a.m. again, and that would be somewhere over here. It doesn't quite fit on my graph.
No, it's like the last line plus 1.
Oh, is it? This is 25,
No, that's
26. I think it would be at 29. So for my space, I don't have space for it, but you might have had space for it.
26 and then 28.
Well, if I'm going through a 24-hour cycle, right, and I start at 5
No, I
hours?
mean, like your graph values. You said 22, 24, 25. It'd be 26.
Oh, 26, 28.
And then the last one would be 29, where your period would end.
Thank you. That makes sense. Gotcha. So 29 is just like a half box off. Okay. All right. So Anna saved us, and we're right here. Okay? So that's your end. So those are both minimum points. Your maximum point is going to be halfway between those. So if your whole period is 24 hours, how many hours till you get to your maximum?
12.
12, yeah. So let me put that a little bit higher for you guys, and then we'll... 12 hours after 5 a.m. is what time? It's 5 p.m., and since this is like military time here, we're talking about 1700 hours. There we go. So 17 hours after midnight, you're at your maximum. All right, did anybody find the midline?
Yeah.
Yes. So when you average the minimum and maximum, what did you get? 98.6. That kind of makes sense, right? Isn't that what your temperature is supposed to be, 98.6? So this would be 98.6 right here. Okay, so for your amplitude, I would take your maximum 99 And subtract what from it?
98.2.
98. Well, that would give me like the twice the amplitude. So I could subtract something if I want to skip that middle step, right? So the amplitude is the distance from the midline to the top. So could I just subtract the midline? Yeah. If you subtract the minimum from the maximum, you can do that, but then you have to do the extra step of dividing by 2. So I get 0.4 for my amplitude. Did you guys get that? 0.4? Oh, you know what? If you got 0.8, you probably did the maximum minus the minimum. So then you still have to divide it by 2 because the amplitude is just from the middle to the top, not from the bottom to the top. Okay, you know what? I think before we keep going, I'd like to add some more points to my graph. So 12 is half the period. What's 1/4 of the period? 3. So every 3 hours, I have another point. So starting at 5, the next one would be at... No, that's not right. It's 6, right?
Because 12 is already half the period.
Thank you. Okay, so Meredith points out 12 is already half the period, so I should half the 12, and every 6 hours I have another point. Thank you. So I'm going to go to 11, and then I'm on the midline. And then I have my high point at 17, and then I'm going to go another 6 hours. Did you say 23? Thank you. Okay, so I think I have the points now. I can sketch in a curve. Sketching's kind of hard on the smartboard. I bet you guys have prettier curves than me. I know, Miss Burrell with the art. Okay. Okay, so that's something like a cosine curve. We said the period is how many hours? 24.
Would it be okay to make the scale graph in 12 hours?
You could, but you're going to see less of the graph if you do that, right? You just won't see a full period. If I count from 1 to 12, then I would only see half the graph.
Sure, 12 a.m. is 0 to 12 a.m.
0, so 0 hours. This is noon here, right? And then this would be midnight or 12 a.m. again. B value is 2 pi over 24, which simplifies to what? 5 or 12. Good. All right. Did you guys choose this one as your start value? The minimum one? Okay, it's okay if you didn't. You might still have a good answer, but this was the only information they gave you at the beginning, so that's a good start point. So in that case, is it sine or cosine? Cosine. And does this cosine have a reflection? Yes. All right, so I heard a number of you got the equation. Even if you don't want to share it, raise your hand if you got the equation. I promise not to call on you. Raise your hand if you have the equation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that is a good start. Now, if you don't have the equation, look at the people who are raising their hand, because those are people who are going to be able to help you, okay? Now, if you'd like to share your equation, raise your hand. Who wants to share that equation? I see 1 hand, 2 hands. All right, Danny, what'd you get?
0.4, negative 0.4 cosine pi over 2 x plus 5 plus 98.6.
X plus 5 plus 98.6. Okay, so somebody tell me what part of that you like. What part's good?
Pi over 12.
Oh, pi over 12? All right, is it all good now? What am I missing then?
The plus sign in the parentheses should be minus.
Okay, does that make sense? If we go right, should it be a minus? Okay, that's okay. I didn't even catch that either. All right, so let's fix it. Make it a minus. Okay, I think this equation is good. Thanks, Danny. Down at the bottom here, if you're pretending to be sick at 7 a.m. but you're well, did anybody put the number in and get a temperature? I got 98.3. You got 98.7?
I guessed 98.2.
Did you guess that by looking at the graph?
Yeah.
That's a good way to guess it. But I think it's 98.3, but you guys let me know if I got that wrong. And when is your temperature the warmest possible, guys? 5 p.m. Very good. 98.5?
I got 98.4.
0.4? Okay. Next class, guys, we're going to try to figure out which one it is, all right?